the Kiwi Ears Septet. Let's talk about it. Now, this is a single dynamic driver, 4BA, 1 planar, 1 PZT, quad-brid IEM from Kiwi Ears that costs $259. This is an open back style IEM and has some unique properties that we will talk about more in the sound quality, but this is a very interesting IEM. And let's start by looking at the build quality of this IEM. The shell has a nice metal build quality to it. It's not too large, it's not too small. I feel like it's the same kind of shell that you would see on most of Kiwi Ears' IEM. It's a little bit wide and it isolates well if it weren't open back. It fits in my ear well and it holds ear tips quite well. The big thing about this one is that it has this open back, unique kind of style to it, which, is not terrible, but it's not the worst thing either. It's a flat 2-pin cable connector, a black shell, and kind of bespoke. And it looks and feels nice in ear, and I kind of dig it. A lot of IEMs as of late have been using this IEM cable design, like the new Meta from Crin Ears, like the Astral, both use this kind of design, and it's great because when you try to grab it out of your amp, you don't grab the entire cable. This is a nice cable. It has a beautiful kind of metallic brown color to it, has a nice chin slider that stays in place, and right red, blue left connectors for the ear hooks. All around solid cable, and it fits the theme quite well. The cable also includes a 4.4 and then with the 3.5, some ear tips, nothing too exciting. This is the case. It is not super engaging. I mean, it's a normal Kiwi Ears case, but it's a case. And it's nice if you ever need to ship it off or, it's just a nice thing to have for storage on the go. Now let's get into the sound. I want to quote a statement from Albert Einstein. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. This is kind of that unique fish. This is a unique, different style IEM. So for those that are looking for a JM1 target, Kiwi Ears has their KE4. For those that are looking for a more vibrant tonality, I just reviewed the Astral and I absolutely love it and give it a strong recommendation, being class leading at its price, at least in my humble opinion. This is different. This is an open back earphone that I see some people liking and some people enjoying, but some people not. It's unique. This IEM is very different in the terms that it is driven. I normally don't talk about how IEMs are driven, but I do try to hold on to good amps and DACs to be able to power my IEMs well. But I feel like it does need to be driven to a little bit of a higher volume, and so I would only recommend this to somebody who has a nice DAP, maybe a dongle DAC, or something like that. Just a little bit more power. I was recently watching a headphones.com live stream, and they were talking about the idea of how when an earphone is on or when a headphone is on, you get that feeling of how sound should be. And this presents sound in a much different but still adequate and eloquent way. This is not what you would expect from an earphone, and it has a different sort of tonality. Depending on what your brain might want, it could be a really strange and poor experience. If you're expecting what your normal's favorite earphone is going to be, this is not going to be it. This is something that's trying something different and unique. So I think depending on what you want in your collection, this could be a very unique, a very special kind of a set due to the sound characteristics. It has kind of a sparkly image to it with kind of a down tilted like slope drive. The The feeling on this is interesting. The bass is fantastic. It's deep. The micro details are nice, clean, clear, and I get the feeling almost like I'm listening to speakers in a room. The openness and the uniqueness of this IEM can't be understated, and I feel that it fits into a unique point in this market. It is a bit of a unique snowflake, and I don't think it's going to be for everyone. As again, Kiwi Ears has released this IEM was along with the Astral basically at the same time, and a few other IEMs. We'll talk about more IEMs in their market with that, but I do want to emphasize the uniqueness. So let's start by looking at some graphs. All right, the Kiwi Ears Septet. You look at this graph, you'll notice it has a nice bass shelf. It kind of has a little bit of lack of upper mids, but I feel like that might or may not help depending on what you're looking for. So it kind of has this bright leaning presentation, and I think it's overall nice. It does have some interesting qualities and characteristics, and a little bit of kind of hiss and noise in certain categories where I don't personally appreciate that kind of thing. But I do like the openness and the detail and the pristineness that occurs in this IEM a great deal. As we look at some other Kiwi Ears IEMs, we're going to try to run the gambit here. We're going to try to be quick. But I do feel that like the Astral for a few dollars more is worth the money if your preference is in line with mine. I feel like it has a little bit more presence region, a little bit less of this upper detailed sparkly treble, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I wanted to show a comparison with another guy who has a 5128, which is a more expensive rig. And this is the Septet versus the Astral, and you can tell like the similar things are together where, the Septet has a little bit more energy from 4 to 6K. But it's also pretty well within the limits of what this reviewer feels would be fair, like what normal IEMs are going to fall under. And it's an all-around solid IEM that doesn't really go too far off in other directions. Let's look at some other Kiwi Ears IEMs that, you can look at. Like, I really like the Aeroso, and the Aeroso is like one of my favorite IEMs. At its price point, I think it does a lot of things well, and has a little bit of sparkle, but it does. The Septet does have a ton of energy, which can be kind of something to pull after. So they do have different signatures. Now, I also really like the Aether. I think the Aether is one of the better planars out there. The Aether has a little bit better upper mids, has a sparkly nature to it, and it just sounds really nice and sounds like glass. It just has a really great characteristic, and I think the Aether is a fun set. And like for those that like planars, that have tried planars in the past, I probably recommend the Aether, and it's a lot cheaper. I've seen it on sale for I think $150, and so I think it's a really solid piece all around. If you're looking for a bass, Kiwi Ears has the Punch from HBB, the collab, and it's a nice set. It's a really nice set. It has really good drivers but it has a ton of bass. For me personally, I like the HBB Punch, and I probably go over it, but it's also almost double the price. So that's something to consider. Now, let's look at some of other Kiwi Ears' more interesting tones. Look at something like the Canta. This is not the Canta. This does not have that level of energy, and I think it's a little bit more in my wheelhouse than the Canta was. Something like the KE4. Now, I like the KE4, and I think it's a really strong set, but there's some qualities and characteristics of the Septet that I think are really unique. It has a unique, fun flair that gets, like the Septet definitely gets a recommendation. But the Kiwi Ears 4 is a really nice set and is really pristine. Like for someone new to the hobby, the Kiwi Ears 4 is one of the ones that I currently recommend. Although there is the Zigat Lush that I have in for review, and that'll probably be next, depending. All right, with the Dulce, what do you notice? Ton of upper mids, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not really for me. I mean, there's other sets out there. Like the Forteza, crazy amount of upper mids, not a great set. Something like the Singolo, tiny itty baby ears, but it has a nice tonality if you're looking for a cheap single dynamic driver. Like the Melody kind of has a crazy tonality, but it's not a bad set overall. If you look at the quintet, you'll notice the quintet also has a lot more upper mids and a lot more subdued, like of that 6 to 10K region. I think the septet is more unique, and I think the quintet is a little bit easier to recommend to a lot of people depending on what you need. So I do feel that the septet in the lineup of Kiwi ears represents a strong value. But I mean, as far as my personal favorite, I probably would rank it like maybe better than most, but not the highest one by any stretch of any imagination. This reminds me a lot of the Alfu Magic 1. I show this a lot in my videos. I don't talk about it a lot in graphs, but it has kind of a unique, special kind of a characteristic about it that not all IEMs kind of have. Like, it's unique. It's a special collector set. Like, it's a single dynamic or single BA driver, which doesn't happen very often. And the septet kind of has that unique open back nature, and I think it's going to present sound in a way that people are going to either love or hate. But I think you should, if you ever have a chance to demo this set, I think you should. Like, if you see it on a show, you'll probably see it at a Linsoul booth with a bunch of Kiwi ears or, the audio sets. You're like, oh yeah, the Valhalla and other sets. Yeah, you probably want to try those, but give the septet a try. It's very unique and has a very interesting presentation to sound with great detail and spaciousness to it. I mean, the tonality a little bit reminds me of the Supernova with a little bit of that extra zing and that 4 to 6K energy. But the septet has more bass, a little bit more of that, a little bit more U-shaped, but it has that similar tonality-ish. Something kind of like the Limeere's Terra, where they both kind of have a lot of bass, whereas the Terra had a lot more upper mids and a lot more presence region. This has a little bit more subdued of that region, and so it becomes a colored set, but a slightly almost L-shaped sort of a set with more bass to kind of overpower those mids, which, I don't know. I think that's part of the reason why I feel like I need to drive it higher, is to get it to a better spot. If we look at something like the Truth Ear Gate, and like one of the problems with the Truth Ear Gate, where I even bring it up, I have it on my desk. I haven't reviewed it. I'm probably going to do a budget roundup here in a few weeks or something. But like, it's it has a decent tonality, but you'll notice like its graph and its curve are just kind of flat and even. And it doesn't add a lot of spice and dynamicness to the sound. And I think something like the septet adds a lot of uniqueness and kind of flair and richness to the sound. And I think having small dips and caveats and just tiny like ripples in the frequency response graph can help. I think that's something, a way that I kind of understand how things can make a difference, but it definitely has a uniqueness and flair to it that is something that's not easy to explain. It has the planar kind of flow. Like, someone asked me to compare this to the NiceHack F1 Pro. And it has this kind of that similar sort of planar-y sort of style, but the planars have a little bit more upper mids, and they have a really great tonality, but the F1 Pros can be a little bit too sizzly, where I don't think the septet's going to be too sizzly, but it may not give you that right amount of upper mids that you want. You might need to do that a little bit. The open nature of the sound, it feels very downward sloping with a ton of bass and just kind of a little bit lacking these upper mids for at least how I listen and how I like. Another IEM this reminds me a little bit of is the EPZ P50. Now, I bought one. I didn't review it. I liked it, but it was unique. It came across too shouty, and I don't know if that's a nature of the open back nature of it, but the septet doesn't really come across shouty. It kind of has a little bit more subdued upper mids, which can be good and bad depending. I think the EPZ P50 it was one of those ones that a lot of people really liked. I was just kind of middling about it and chose not to review it. It was a personal unit, not one that was a sample, and so it was kind of like, hey, I just didn't feel like talking about it, and so it's kind of one of those things where they both kind of have that open back style, and so that open back presentation might come at you in a good way or come at you in a bad way. For me, the Septet comes across in a really nice, clean tonality. The EPZ P50, I recognize that as a good set, but not something that I personally would want to listen to myself. Again, with these ripples and curves, like it reminds me a little bit of the Performer 7, but much more so the Performer 5. Like it just kind of has somewhat of a similar tonality, maybe a little bit more bass, a little bit more sizzle in those upper air regions, but I think it has kind of this unique tonality to it that a lot of people might like, and I think it's a very unique piece in the market. All right, let's talk about how I rank the Septet. I really like the air and the highs in this set. The mids I feel like could be a little bit better. When I tried some EQ, I did like them in the Septet more. I think the bass is thumpy and rich and fun, and it kind of feels like it slants kind of bassy, but the note weight and the overall bass of it doesn't feel as dynamic as I might want. I feel like it needs to be driven to really high levels. And I feel like it images well, and it has a pristineness, a clarity, like almost like an open back planar kind of a sound to it, but it's not perfect. It has a great soundstage, and I've almost thought about even giving it a 10 to talk about it, but its soundstage is really unique, and it really has that feel that you're almost hearing music in a room rather than actually there. It's a unique experience, but it's not something that I can heartily recommend to everybody, especially those that are earphone users. But I think that those that try it might find the uniqueness of something that they really crave and want in their collection. All right, so I wanted to show you guys my ranking list. Down here at the bottom, you can go to the top 10 IEMs at each price point, and I've divided my entire list and just taken the top 10 in certain price categories. This does make that top 10 because I do think the treble on it is really impressive. The upper mids isn't really where I want, but I do think it has an impressive tonality that I think it makes it competitive in the market. For me, personally, I probably would advise you to spend a little bit more, maybe get the Astral, maybe the Performer 7. There's a few other sets out there, like the Ziggett Odyssey is something that's really, really good to think about. I mean, the market's chock full of things, like even something like the Kiwi Ears Aether kind of gets my recommendation. There's a ton of great sets out there that are happening right now. So it's kind of hard to recommend the Septet, but it still gets a recommendation because it does something unique and special, but doesn't really hit that target that you might want. But like at this price point, I think it becomes a great toy and a very unique, fun signature. You know, a lot of guys in my Discord and a lot of kind of friends I know in the hobby have kind of recently come across, like Kiwi Ears has done like 5 IEMs in the last few months, and it's a little bit daunting for most people to come up with. You have to kind of look at where that IEM falls in the market. Are they looking to make one IEM for everybody? I mean, I don't think so. They're looking to appeal to certain target demographics. And to me, this IEM is interesting because it appeals to people in that mid-fi region that are looking for a unique, different sound. Like if you're looking to spend a little bit of money, you're looking for something that's not like every other IEM out there. Like one of the guys in my comments was complaining about in my Astro video the other day that I did, that like it's so much like the Zen's Pro, and I have to agree. It's a lot like that. It's a lot like what other IEM target curves are going at. This is not that. It's a little bit unique, but still in the wheelhouse where I think is gonna be acceptable. I think it's an interesting set. I don't think it's gonna be for everybody, but I feel that like it is very impressive for what it does. Its detail, the quality of the sound, and how it sounds in ear is a really fun experience that I encourage you guys to try. It gets a recommendation. It makes the top 10 at its price category, but it doesn't get that overwhelming, exuberant, like recommendation that I kind of want to give it, because I think the lack of upper mids and just the interesting tonality that this open back IEM is going to give some people. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye. You're still here. It's over. Go home. Oh, you're expecting a teaser for our next video. Well, we don't have that kind of money. What are you expecting? One of those store reviewers to show up in a saucy little leather number? Go. Oh, I can tell you one thing. We are going to have a collab video. We have no idea what it's going to be. Probably Kryn, maybe Chris, or Joyce. Don't deny it. She's got range. Go. Get out of here. Go.
Go!
Go.
Go on with you!